The ankle technique is one of the fastest and cleanest way to play double bass. But most drummers miss the point. I know because I struggled with it too. In this video right here, I'll show you the biggest mistake drummers make when learning the ankle technique and how to actually get it right. Here's the thing. When I talk about the ankle technique, I'm talking about something completely different than what most other teachers call the ankle technique or ankle motion. I'm not saying my definition is the right one, but I want to be clear that my approach is different from what you'll find in other tutorials, and this difference can help you play faster with more control. Some call it the ankle technique, others call it ankle motion. The name isn't what really matters. What matters is the approach and the results. So in this video, when I say ankle technique, remember I'm talking about my specific approach, which is quite different from what you might have seen elsewhere. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly how to start practicing the ankle technique and fix what's been holding you back. I'll break down the key differences, show you the best way to practice, and talk about the honest limitations of this foot technique. Before I show you my way, let me explain why I love this technique and what my goal is when using it for double bass drumming. Most drummers end up with many different foot techniques they need to switch between based on the tempo. You might use one technique from 120 to 140 beats per minute, then switch to another for 140 to 180, and yet another when you need to go faster. That's a lot of techniques to learn and switches to worry about. My goal with the ankle technique isn't to have another random foot technique that only works in a small 20 BPM range. That's useless and just makes your playing more complex. What I want is one technique that works across a wide tempo range. For me, the ankle technique starts actually working well around 140 to 150 BPM, and I can use it all the way up to 300 beats per minute. That's a huge range of over 150 BPM covered by a single technique. That's right, one technique from 150 to 300 BPM. If you could use just one technique across that entire tempo range, wouldn't that make double bass drumming simpler for you? Imagine not having to switch between techniques mid-song just to handle tempo changes. This approach right here gives you more consistent playing, makes practice more efficient, and gives you more confidence when performing. You can focus on musicality rather than constantly worrying about technique changes. Now let me tell you a quick story about a student who joined my drum camp last week. We just launched Marthyn's drum camp officially 2 weeks ago and already have more than 60 members in our online community. This new member has previously paid another teacher a lot of money to join his ankle technique mastery program. But here's the problem with what he got for his money. This teacher's ankle technique only worked from 170 to 220 beats per minute. So below 170, the instructor told him to use a completely different technique because his version simply doesn't work at slower tempos. And above 220 beats per minute, this teacher told him to switch to the heel-toe technique because the tempo is too fast for his version of the ankle technique. So, after spending a lot of money on this program, my students still had to learn 3 different foot techniques to cover this tempo range. He paid top dollar to master a technique that only covers a 50 BPM range. And now, as a result, since his focus was split between 3 different techniques, he's still struggling with all 3 of them. So when he joined our drum camp, he was frustrated because all he wanted to do was playing something like this. In this clip you can see me play at 160 BPM, switching between 16 notes and 16 note triplets using just one foot technique, my approach to the ankle technique. For that other instructor out there with his ankle technique mastery course, this would actually be impossible with his approach. The 60 notes at 160 would be too slow for his version of the ankle technique, and the 60 note triplets at 160, which is the same tempo as 60 notes at 240 BPM, would be too fast, forcing him to switch to the heel-toe technique. So let me ask you this. If one technique could help you play clean double bass, starting at around 150 all the way up to speeds faster than 250 BPM. Wouldn't you at least be curious to try it? My student was, and he joined our program for less than $100 per month, and now he's learning this different approach. My approach to the anchor technique is actually quite simple, but fundamentally different. Here's how it works. The main pressure point for me is the ball of my foot and my toes. I focus on lifting my heel using my calf muscle. My upper legs stay completely relaxed at all times, and the weight of my upper leg stays on the pedal as a counterweight. And actually, this counterweight is crucial. When I contract my calf muscle, it automatically lifts my heel, which makes the bass drum beater move toward the bass drum head. My upper leg is relaxed at all times. I don't want to use my hip flexor to lift the weight of my leg off the pedals. I'm only focusing on my calf muscle lifting my heels rapidly. And now let's talk about the big differences. Here's the approach other teachers are using. They focus on pushing down with the toes and the front part of their foot instead of lifting their heels. They tell you to practice heel down instead of the actual foot position you use during the anchor technique. They even send their students to the gym and tell them to add exercises to train their tibialis anterior, their shin muscle. So let me show you the difference. Many teachers suggest practicing heel down to develop their version of the anchor technique. For my approach, practicing heel down is not going to help you. Yes, practicing heel down is a simple beginner exercise, but spending too much time on it will make it more difficult to master my version of the anchor technique. Remember, you will not place your foot like this when using the anchor technique, since your heels are actually lifted at all times. And for my version of the anchor technique, you want to train your body to rely as little as possible on the shin muscle. You want your calves to do the work for you. And here's why this matters so much. Every teacher out there who focuses on pushing down with the toes and tells you to train your shin muscle, every single one of them has to switch techniques when they hit around 230 beats per minute. Every single one of them. It's not a coincidence, it's a physical limitation of their approach. All those YouTube teachers who tell students to practice heel down and push down with their toes prove the speed limits of that technique. Without exception, they all are switching to either the heel toe or the swivel technique as soon as the tempo goes beyond the 230 BPM limit. Check out their YouTube channels. As soon as they increase the tempo and want to show off, they all switch to either the heel toe or swivel technique. They can't deny that. So, by focusing on lifting your heels instead of pushing down with your toes, you're using the right muscles for speed and endurance across a much wider tempo range. So now let's talk about how to first start practicing this technique following my approach. The best and easiest way to develop this technique is through what I like to call the bounce workout. For this one, you can remove your bass drum. You'll just need your bass drum pedals for this following exercise. Now there are 3 key ingredients that must be in place for this exercise to work. Number 1, proper pedal settings. This includes spring tension, beta angle, and how the pedal is set up overall. These settings can greatly affect how well you can use this technique. Number 2, foot position on the footboard. As I mentioned, for my approach, when first starting out, you want your toes and the ball of your foot around the middle of the footboard, allowing your heel to lift and lower easily. And finally, engaging the calf muscle, not the hip flexor. The most important part is making sure your upper leg is relaxed while your calf does all the work. Your heel should be lifting and lowering smoothly, creating that consistent beater swing. If there's even a little tension in your hip flexor, then this approach won't work. As soon as you take the weight of your leg off your pedals by contracting your hip flexor, you'll automatically fall back to pushing down with your toes instead of lifting your heels. The bounce workout helps you build the muscle memory needed for this technique while making sure you're using the right muscle groups. With regular practice and repetition of this workout, you start to develop the control needed to use the anchor technique across different tempos. Now, my friends, I want to be completely honest with you. My approach to the anchor technique isn't perfect, and it has 3 main downsides you should know about. This is something that actually most drum teachers won't do. They'll tell you how great their technique is without mentioning the weak spots, but I believe you deserve the full picture. So here it is. First, you'll need different foot positions for different tempos. At 150 BPM, my foot is placed further back on the footboard, compared to actually 200 BPM, where it moves towards the middle. At higher tempos, I have to slide my foot further to the front of the footboard. So you have to adjust this position as your tempo changes. Yes, it would be way better and way easier if you could always keep your foot in exactly the same position, but that's not how this technique works best. Second, this technique doesn't work well at slow tempos below 140 beats per minute. Why? Because you need a steady, consistent back and forth beater swing. At slower tempos like 80, 100 or 120 BPM, that motion gets interrupted because the tempo is just too slow. That's why the slowest tempo you can effectively use this technique at is around 140 to 150 beats per minute. Interestingly enough, playing at 140 with this technique is actually harder and takes more control and effort than playing at 180 BPM. So unfortunately, just starting slow and gradually increasing the tempo doesn't work well with this technique. It actually gets easier as you go faster up to a point. And the third big weak spot is that at higher tempos, you need to lean forward and apply extra pressure on your pedals. This decreases your beater swing, which increases your speed, but also makes your volume drop drastically. This extra pressure and forward-leaning posture is not ideal, but it's necessary to reach those higher speeds. You just have to accept that your volume will decrease as well. It's a trade-off between speed and power, just like with every other technique out there. Once you hit tempos faster than 250 BPM, your volume will drop significantly. So now let me ask you this. If you could play clean double bass at 160, 200 and 240 beats per minute with just one technique, even if it means less volume at higher tempos, would that trade-off be worth it to you? For many drummers, including myself, the answer is absolutely yes. If you've been struggling with the ankle technique, you are not alone. Most drummers are taught an approach that limits their speed and forces them to switch between multiple techniques just to play through a single song. The approach I've shared today focuses on lifting your heel using your calf muscle rather than pushing down with your toes. This simple change makes a huge difference in the tempos you can achieve with one single technique. If you want to learn this method and get coached by me personally, then make sure to check out Marthyn's Drum Camp. And here's the deal. Best case, when you decide to join, you finally get the ankle technique to click and you stop switching between techniques just to survive a song. You play with more speed, more control and more consistency. And worst case, you try it for 1 month. You spend less than $100. You learn something new. And even if it's not the right fit, you leave with more clarity than you had before. If that sounds fair to you, then go to school.com/Marthyn or click the link below this video. No pressure, just a better way to learn.